Does Nebraska have the star power to look like it fits in the top group of the Big Ten? We're not so sure. That's next.
You are Locked On Nebraska, your daily Nebraska Cornhuskers podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Good morning or afternoon, and thanks for listening to Locked On Nebraska, making it your first listen every day. We are free and available wherever you get podcasts and on YouTube, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
All right, here we go, everybody. Connor Happer here from 1620 The Zone. Mitch Sherman from The Athletic. This is, depending on when you're catching us, it is Big Ten Media Days. Although we're recording this on Monday morning, it'll probably come out Monday night, and then you'll probably hear
it through the day Tuesday.
Yeah, go through the day Tuesday, because this will last all the way up until Nebraska's. This podcast will self-destruct right when Nebraska, makes their entrance at Big Ten Media Days at the Mandalay Bay in Vegas. But here we are, just to one last time preview through a couple storylines that Nebraska is going to get asked about today. That will be talking points for the head coach. There are three players that are representing them, and the athletic director, I'm sure, will be along for the ride as well. So there's a lot to cover. And also on the eve of Big Ten Media Days, the preseason poll is out.
Oh, it is.
The non-official, official Big Ten preseason football poll, as collected by Cleveland.com, as voted on by a panel of Big Ten writers. Nebraska picked 8th in the league, right behind Iowa. Of course, Dylan Raiola shows up right behind Mark Gradowski on the big quarterbacks list. Nebraska's picked right behind Iowa on the Big Ten tier list as well. Penn State is the top vote getter. They are the favorite in the league by one first place vote over Ohio State, 11-10 there. Oregon comes in third. Illinois, Michigan round out the top 5.
Yeah, Indiana and Iowa just ahead of Nebraska. And then Nebraska slots right above USC, Washington, Minnesota, and Wisconsin. We discussed this a bit on our show that posted Sunday night into Monday, which went through Big Ten storylines that impacted Nebraska. We looked at 5 teams that are on Nebraska's schedule. So if you missed that show, maybe it's outdated because we didn't have a preseason poll. But for the most part, I think it holds up. Go check that show out. Also, a programming note, you can find our mailbag episode from last Friday on the audio feeds now. Yeah. It wasn't there on Friday or really most of the weekend. It was on YouTube. So I hope you saw it on YouTube, but now it's on Apple and Spotify. So no comment from me on what happened to prevent it from showing up where it was supposed to on Friday, but it's there now. We've got a show for you Monday night into Tuesday. And then, as Connor said, it will self-destruct. Matt Rhule goes on stage 2:30 p.m. on Tuesday. That's Central Time. Okay. So the festivities begin with Tony Pettiti taking the stage, the commish, at 1 p.m. Central, followed by 6 head coaches. Rhule's at 2:30. Later in the afternoon, Rhule will have a side session with the media in attendance, as will Dylan Raiola, Henry Lutovsky, and Deshaun Singleton.
All right, so now let's get into it. What are the first couple things that are going to be on the media's mind at media days on Tuesday as Matt Rhule takes the big podium? And he'll do a lot. I mean, he'll go up. He has a side session that he has to do. He will visit with all of the TV networks that will have their own kind of side rooms. He will visit with the Big Ten Network, who will be doing a live show there. He will be visiting likely with every Nebraska radio station that wants him. There will be a few of them that usually they try to accommodate that every year. So there will be a lot of talking from Matt Rhule, but a lot of the times when we get to these things, there's a central message, and that is kind of dispersed out into whatever interview he does.
Yeah, you're right. You're right. And that is not always something that you find from a coach. But in Rhule's 2 previous appearances at Big Ten Media Days, he talked, I think the first time was when he talked about having to earn the right to be respected.
Correct.
And that was really I mean, everybody heard that. Every interview that he did, that was the big thing. So I'll be curious to see what Rhule's message is this year. Here's a question that I have going in as I looked at the media poll that came out early Monday morning. Does Nebraska fit among the teams in the Big Ten with the star power to earn respect from the get-go? So we went through the poll and how it slotted Nebraska in 8th place. Here are the programs and the number of players that had representation in the preseason player of the year voting. Penn State, 5 players, Ohio State, 4, Oregon, 4, Iowa, 2, Indiana, 4. Sorry, that was out of order, Iowa. Michigan, 3, Illinois, 2, Washington, 2, UCLA, 1, Minnesota, 1. That's 10 different teams
Wow.
that have a name in there. And really, that's all it is. Like, if you have a known name, and Dylan Raiola is Nebraska's most known name, but he's not in a position where people are picking him as the preseason player of the year.
Right.
If you have a known name, like at linebacker or in the secondary or as a receiver, then you can get a vote here or there. Mark Gronowski, the Iowa quarterback, had 2 points in that, like 2 votes. And I'm not sure there. We've talked a lot about Mark Gronowski over the last week because, as you mentioned, he was ranked 1 spot ahead of Dylan Raiola in the Athletics 101 through 136 QB ranking. Somebody talked to me about this over the weekend who saw him play in the one game last year that South Dakota State went up against a power program, and it was Oklahoma State early in the season. And he didn't look like the Big Ten player of the year in that game. Let's just say that, against Big 12 competition. So I don't know, but that's 10 different teams. Ernest Hausman received 1 vote for Defensive Player of the Year, the Michigan linebacker who began his career at Nebraska, Columbus, Nebraska product. So Nebraska's under the radar, or like maybe it just hasn't recruited, other than Raiola, the kind of players who get you this kind of recognition.
Yeah, I mean, you have to win enough for people to know who you are as well. There is that. A lot of Nebraska's players that they'll be relying on this year are transfers, and they're new, and it's hard to sort of project those guys unless they were all league at the league that they were coming from, and it was in a power league or something like that. So, I mean, Nebraska has Marcus Watson-Trent, who was the Defensive Player of the Year in the Sun Belt last year. I mean, that's probably worthy of a vote or two in a situation like this. I think that production will translate over, but generally, yeah, I mean, I think it makes a lot of sense why Nebraska doesn't have any players nominated on this list. Do they, from a star power perspective, is it Penn State, Ohio State, Oregon? No, it is not. But I do think that's where the tier line is for the league. A lot of people like Illinois this year. Schedule lines up, return a lot. Bill has done it before and won before, and he's got it going right now at Illinois. So they're the default, like, top of the pack for the rest of the pack at the moment. But I do think everybody else in there, maybe with the exception of Michigan, who has a little bit of a higher ceiling than the other schools we're talking about here, is right in the same, right in that same range. Illinois, Indiana, Iowa, Nebraska, USC, Washington, Michigan State, I would put in that category as well. And then maybe UCLA, you could kind of make a case for them. But I do think there's a big scrum in the middle. Nebraska's always been picked to be in that scrum in the middle, and they rarely end up coming out on top of it. And so in order to do that, you do need your stars to be stars.
So the way that this worked in the Player of the Year voting is the 25 panelists were asked to choose 3 players and then name a first place. Yeah, rank 1, 2, 3. So that would explain like why people like Aiden Fisher of Indiana, like nobody picked him to be the preseason player of the year, but he got a vote. Ernest Hausman, who I mentioned, got 1 vote. Jayshon Barham, a linebacker from Michigan. Like, I've not heard of him.
Mhm.
I will. Like, no disrespect there. I'm sure when Michigan comes into Lincoln, but he's not a household name in the Big Ten.
Right.
Got 2 points. So, there are your people at the top like Caleb Downs. He's the overwhelming favorite to be the defensive player of the year. Drew Aller won it in the on the offensive side. I would have voted for Jeremiah Smith. I didn't vote in this. Have never voted in this. Thank you, Cleveland. But I would have voted for Jeremiah Smith as my top choice. I think he's the best player in the country, or right there. But
yeah, I think I would definitely choose him over Drew Aller personally.
Yeah.
But that's a.
But anyway,
yes.
the fact that Nebraska has nobody getting a third place vote here, I think, says something just about how people outside of Lincoln or within Lincoln, because there was some representation from Nebraska who voted for this, and nobody thought enough of Nebraska players to say, yeah, I think that that's the third best player on offense or defense in the league. Interestingly, they also vote on a preseason coach of the year. I don't know how that works. Like, you haven't coached any games yet, but what are you basing that on? Is it like how well they did in the summer? I realize with the player of the year, it's like a projection, but it's also just like how good you are. And I don't necessarily see like the apples to apples equivalent there in picking a preseason coach of the year.
And we all know how it works at the end of the year too, with the actual coach of the year selection. It just goes to the best coach. It either goes to the Ohio State coach or the coach on the team that overachieved the most.
The biggest overachiever. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. And I think like it was a squeaker. James Franklin, because Penn State's picked to win the league, James Franklin got the most votes. And I understand that. And I guess if Penn State wins the league because it hasn't happened under James Franklin, like, he would be a worthy choice for sure. Brett Bielema got 9 votes to Franklin's 10. So there's a faction out there that believes Illinois is going to be that team that it wouldn't be overachieving because Illinois is a top 15 preseason team, but the team that jumps up above what is normal.
That's the other thing that's happening, right? I mean, there is a lot on Illinois all of a sudden. People have just chosen them as like I said, the team that is kind of representing, if you're assuming Penn State, Ohio State, and Oregon all make the playoff and you're looking for a fourth team, not everybody, but most people are choosing Illinois at this point. And I just think that spot is up for grabs. I know the schedule is lines up for them, and they're old. And all the things that people have been saying about them all summer. But I don't think there's much that, from a star power perspective, like we're talking about in this conversation, I don't think that there's much that differentiates them from some of their peers who are a spot or 2 spots or 3 spots or 4 spots behind them in the kind of mucky middle in the league. So I think chances are it won't be Bielema as coach of the year. It'll be somebody from a little bit further down the line.
Yeah, to your point, Illinois' average ranking from the pollsters 4.88, and that is 4th place. Michigan 5.16. So a fairly sizable gap between Illinois and Michigan, choose Illinois as the number 4 team in the Big Ten, and that's going to be right on the conversation to be in the playoff. Okay, let's come back and get to more of what we need to hear from Nebraska at Big Ten Media Days on Tuesday. That's coming up next. But now, a message from Game Time. Have you ever decided at the last minute that you need to head to a ball game or an event with friends or family? I have. Maybe it's game day, and suddenly you realize you just need to be in the stands. That's exactly where Game Time enters the equation. It is the easiest way to get last-minute tickets without the stress. And with the money that you save on tickets, you can then splurge on food, drinks, merch, or maybe bring a bigger group to the game with you. Game Time makes that possible. It makes buying tickets fast and simple. Prices on the Game Time app actually drop the closer you get to the beginning of the event. They've got incredible last-minute deals, clear seat views, and a lowest price guarantee that takes the worry out of buying. Maybe you want to see an event in Las Vegas while you're there to do some work. You can go to Game Time and check out everything that's going on in the city that you are visiting, or if it's in your hometown and you're bored, go check out Game Time. You can search by location. You can search by the team that you want to follow, you can search by the date. It's all there. Game Time takes the guesswork out of buying tickets. So download the Game Time app, create an account, use the code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account, redeem the code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off. Download the Game Time app today. Last minute tickets, lowest price, guaranteed. Mitch Sherman, Connor Happer with you, Locked On Nebraska podcast. Thank you for joining us. It is Monday late in the day. Maybe it's Tuesday when you're consuming this podcast. Nebraska is up on day one at Big Ten Media Days in Las Vegas. The Huskers will bring, of course, Coach Matt Rhule to the festivities. Also, Dylan Raiola, Henry Lutovsky, and Deshaun Singleton. So they will all have their moment in the hot desert sun, although I think we'll be air conditioned and comfortable inside the Mandalay Bay. So what do we need to know? What do we need to know from Matt Rhule, from Troy Dannen, and from the players in attendance? We talked about Nebraska's star power or lack thereof in the first segment. I am interested because we haven't heard from Matt Rhule in this kind of a setting since the end of spring practice in April about updates to the roster. Last year, we got some stuff from Rhule in the summer. We heard from some of Nebraska's support pieces, like the sports science and strength and conditioning and nutrition. They did various interviews. This year was more quiet. Rhule made an occasional appearance on a national show or podcast, but for the most part, we don't know what has happened, or we're hearing from secondary channels what has happened over the last 2 to 3 months in Lincoln. So Rhule will have updates on the roster, including what's the latest on players who were injured and out for the spring, like Carter Nelson, the all-important piece at tight end, like Demetrius Bell, who fascinated us in our Bowl of Fascination discussion last week and the week before as a wide receiver. And then some of those offensive linemen. Nebraska was down several offensive linemen. Gunnar Gattulo was out. Turner Corcoran was out. Teddy Prohaska was out. Henry Lutovsky, who will be in Las Vegas, missed some time in the spring too. So what's the latest on all of those players? What excites you or what interests you most about that roster conversation with Rhule on Tuesday?
Yeah, I think that's a really good place to start. Like you said, Mitch, remember, they held a lot of guys out of spring, and it just, it sort of took a little bit of the edge off of spring ball, just in terms of what we were actually going to see this fall. So I don't think they have a very clear picture of what that looks like from an organized perspective, and they'll start to gather that next week when they start camp. So I think that's a really good place to start. Who's going to be available for you? Who's going to take more time? And then I think people will always be, wonder about how the quarterbacks and the receivers are sort of gelling together. And you think about, the storyline of it's kind of the second year of the Dana Holgorsen offense and how that progression is going. Dana, just probably cruising back into town here in the next couple days after his gallivanting around the globe, which is awesome. So I think that's a really good place to start. But this will be the time, this one, and then next week the pre-camp press conference with Rhule. I think that'll be a time where Rhule maybe mentions a couple guys, and we're sort of watching out for him in fall camp, and maybe it's the guys that you want it to be. Like we talk about Carter Nelson and Demetrius Bell, guys like that. Like I think if you hear those names, people will be like, all right, that's a good thing. Isaiah Mosey, all right, that's a good thing for Nebraska because it comes at a position of need a little bit. So the roster is always, I think 1A, at least for the local people at a thing like this.
Yeah, the running back situation and what Nebraska might do or who might shift a spot is into that spot is interesting. The name, of course, out there the most is Isaiah Mosey, the true freshman wide receiver who could see some time at running back when preseason camp opens on Monday. The Huskers are back in Lincoln. this coming weekend after Big Ten Media Days, and then they'll be out getting started on the practice field on Monday, which is July 28th, and it's 1 month from the season opener. A little bit of breaking news before we get to the next subject. Here, as we record on Monday morning, this will probably be old news by the time you all listen to this later in the day on Monday or Tuesday, but I want to mention it because we talked about Michigan on the show that posted Sunday night and then is still making the rounds on Monday morning. But Tony Pettiti sent a letter to the NCAA. This is an ESPN report, a story written by Dan Wetzel that came out this morning. Pettiti has sent a letter to the NCAA Committee on Infractions arguing that Michigan deserves no further punishment in the case that involved former staffer Connor Stallion. So, of course, Michigan has proposed suspending Coach Sharon Moore for multiple games at the beginning of the 2025 season. That would include the Wolverines' trip to Lincoln on September 20th. And the commissioner, Tony Pettiti, is saying they've done enough already. The Harbaugh stuff, that his suspensions in the 2023 national championship season were enough. So if you're listening, NCAA, the Big Ten commish says you can stop now looking into the Wolverines and just let them go on. So I don't know if that means that they would then take back the proposed suspension for Moore, or if Pettiti's more like, no, they should still do that. But it's definitely a story to follow.
It's a really interesting gesture from the commissioner. And maybe those words tend to carry a little bit of weight if it comes from the conference commissioner. But it's how I view it. It's the conference commissioner kind of getting behind one of its marquee teams, one of its big brand carriers in the league, and saying, all right, haven't they done enough here? Can we why do we continue to string this thing out? So might not come at the applaud of many of the other Big Ten teams. But it certainly would sit well with Michigan.
Is Tony Pettiti sending letters on behalf of the other 17 teams in the Big Ten to various entities that may or may not impact their success in 2025? I don't know. Maybe he is. He's also getting out ahead of this before he has a Q&A session in Las Vegas on Tuesday. So undeniably, he's going to get asked about this. He was already going to get asked about Michigan and its infractions case with the NCAA. But now he has a stance, and we know how he feels. In his belief is that Michigan has done enough. They have paid the price enough. Did you see how much they suffered during that run to the national championship a couple of years ago? So stop thinking about punishing Michigan. Okay, one more item on Nebraska's plate that I want to get to before we take a break and finish up with the third segment. So 3 weeks of revenue sharing are in the books. It is July 21st or 22nd, depending on when you're listening to this. And Nebraska's been paying players, been giving out checks for the month of July. So we're not going to get, likely anytime soon, the details from Nebraska on how it divides the money up between players or even between sports. I don't think we'll hear from Troy Dannen on Tuesday that Nebraska's giving $14 million or $14.5 or $15 million to its football program. But maybe he can shed some light. And I will ask him this. Maybe he can shed some light on the processes that Nebraska uses to make those decisions. How do you decide to give football X amount? How do you decide what your men's basketball program gets, if your baseball program gets any money for revenue sharing, if your wrestling program or your track and field program that has produced national champions, or your volleyball program, which is a contender year in and year out for the national championship, what kind of money do they get? I would like to hear his answer on that now that they are actually paying the players.
To take it a step further, I'm interested in the process of who actually receives the money once it's earmarked for football or men's basketball. Yeah. Who receives the money across, literally in their bank accounts or by check or whatever it might be. That's kind of fascinating. Who's that decision made by? Is it a collaborative decision from coaches and personnel and staffers and stuff like that? I wonder about that as well. I think Dannen will be really careful about the specifics on this, but I do think we have a relatively Clear is not the right word for it. We have a decent picture of how that money is kind of going to break down. We know what Nebraska cares about the most. It's football. But I think the curiosity in Nebraska and the where they split the money is, okay, what happens after that? And what, is it volleyball? I mean, after men's basketball as well, because that's always going to be second. But how much are you putting into
that? You have to be competitive. Yeah, I mean, with men's basketball, it's just a matter of doing what your peers are doing. And Nebraska wants to pay its men's basketball players. Don't get me wrong, but like you can't compete in the Big Ten if you're not at least trying to keep up with the Indianas and Michigan States and Purdue's of the world.
Undoubtedly. So then where does volleyball come in? Where does wrestling come in? Who has aspirations to win a national championship coming up this year? So it's all. I mean, it takes a lot of planning. They had a lot of time to do this. So I'm curious to see what Dannen talks about tomorrow.
Okay, we'll come back and we'll talk about where did that live bowl come from in June. Maybe Matt Rhule will give us an answer on Tuesday in Las Vegas. That is next.
But first, a word from our friends at Monarch Money. Do you ever wish managing your money felt a little bit easier with Monarch? It can. Whether you're growing your savings, planning a big purchase, Monarch puts you in the driver's seat. It's like having your own personal CFO, giving you full visibility and control over your finances. Monarch Money is more than just a budgeting app. It's a complete financial command center where you could track all your accounts, all your investments, all your spending, all in one place. So in addition to managing your money, you're also building your wealth. Maybe you have a financial goal like a big purchase that you are getting serious about. This is a really good place to once again collaborate with the people who you are going in on this purchase with, whether it be your family, your wife. So it's an opportunity for you to both put this in the financial command center, and Monarch is going to make it easier for you to find and do that. So we offer you the ability to take control of your finances with Monarch Money, and use the code LOCKEDONCollege at monarchmoney.com. 50% off your first year. monarchmoney.com, code LOCKEDONCollege, half off your first year. All right, welcome back. Connor Happer, Mitch Sherman here with you, rounding out a Monday podcast on the eve of Big Ten Media Days. Once again, this podcast will self-destruct here on Tuesday afternoon after Nebraska. We drink out of the fire hose for a day or two, and then you get to hear from the rest of the conference and what crazy stuff people might say as we go on. You know what crazy crap might Kurt Signetti say?
He's up on Tuesday as well.
Yeah, right, exactly. I think
so's Bielema and so's Ryan Day. Like
it's kind of a busy day, but I guess when you have 18 teams in your conference, there's going to be storylines just about every time. But what happens the rest of the week will be fascinating. And then, like we said, Nebraska will open up camp a week from today, and Matt Rhule will be speaking again as we go into camp.
That's when it really gets. That's when we start getting into the nitty gritty. This is just an appetizer this week, but it's so great. It's such a tasty appetizer because we haven't eaten. We haven't been to the buffet for months, it seems. Are you having FOMO? I say the word buffet. Are you having any FOMO that you're not going to be experiencing the Viva Las Vegas feeling that so many of your cohorts are?
I'd love any opportunity to go to Vegas. There's no doubt about it. But I will say, here's how I'm rationalizing it to myself. I don't want to go to Vegas in July.
Okay.
Now that's just how I'm rationalizing it to myself, because like you said, and you mentioned earlier, when you're inside the casino, it could be, you could be in Antarctica and it wouldn't, you wouldn't notice the difference. So like, that's how I'm just rationalizing it to myself.
Because so many of the experiences that are memorable in Las Vegas happen outside, right?
Right. But that's one of the things that I'm just telling myself to not have FOMO at this point.
All right. Well, one thing that's a little bit different about this offseason is what Nebraska did in June. It was a huge month for recruiting, and it has been that way for a few years now. June has just become the biggest month of the year for recruiting. For most teams, Nebraska definitely on that list, and the Huskers bolstered their class and got to a place with 12 commitments now heading into preseason camp that puts them in a good spot because of the size that this class needs to be and the objectives that Matt Rhule has with this group as they slowly diminish the size of the roster from what was 150 a year ago to 105 a few years from now. They're at around 120 to 125. We can get a number on from Rhule on that too, on how many players are coming into camp when they report this weekend. They were 21 over the limit coming out of June, according to the roster on Huskers.com. 21 over the 105 limit, and then Jaden Doss, the receiver or DB, who was a scholarship player, was put on the DSA list, so he was allowed to transfer. The portal open for him. He's the only one that we're aware of from Nebraska who has taken advantage of this summer portal time and gone to leave. He ended up at Kansas, so right. A hometown kind of move for Jaden Doss. So also in June, Nebraska did OTAs, and they had extended time with the players on the field with coaches. And this has been a thing that's been coming about in college sports, but in my conversation with Dana Holgerson in June, I felt like this is the most that the coaches have worked with players in June. Maybe last year was somewhat similar, but they got a lot done. They're not out there in pads. Nobody's tackling or anything like that. It's more just like walkthroughs and installation. Important things for coaches who want the players to be able to understand what they're supposed to do on the football field. So this will be a great time on Tuesday for us to hear from Rhule, and I would say Rhule and Raiola, most importantly, about their observations from that time on the field in June.
Yeah, I'm really glad that the NCAA took a little bit of the reins off of the amount of time that these guys can be on the field. You know, if they're there, which they always are, they're basically, there is no summer anymore. It's not they don't go home for very long at a time,
right?
You know, like at all. So they live there and they're basically professionals. So let's have an opportunity for them to get all the practice time they can and to be better at what they do and what they're there for. So I think that's a good thing. But yeah, undoubtedly some players have popped during that period of time. It's an opportunity, you know, every time they step on the field is an opportunity to sort of make a move. So I think that's really fascinating. You mentioned this before, Mitch. Where did the cow come from? Where did they get the big cow? I have seen, by the way, since the cow, which was at the beginning of June, where they had many recruits in, I've seen many like photoshops of, you know, the cow in various places. Matt Rhule riding the cow. Like AI has kind of taken over this thing. But this will be a topic for Matt Rhule in one of the side sessions. Sure. Certainly.
You see a cow inside of a building, like with recruits around and a football coach, and you think, wow, look at that giant animal. And then I've heard some who said that it was like a miniature sized bull. I mean, we're talking about a bull here, like a male cow. I don't know the difference when I look at a cow
because I think that's a catch-all, right?
Right. You're less likely to be wrong if you just say it was a cow. They just rounded up a cow. Maybe John Cook was involved. I don't know.
Somebody's going to be in the comments of this video. They're going to say, you guys are idiots, which is pretty normal.
We already know that.
Yeah.
It was a bull. According to various media reports from back in June, they had a bull inside. Yeah. A steer. I don't know. Is it a longhorn? It helped them recruit. Like the recruits who were in for that weekend, they loved it. They took pictures, and Matt Rhule took pictures. And there's some crazy memes out there, you know, with Rhule and his like rodeo look.
Yeah.
So
like a lot of schools have the big, you know, throne. Nebraska has a big animal that they
used to have. They used to have the throne. They used to have the recruits come sit in a giant chair like they were the king of something. This is way better. Like I gotta say, it's for me, like it's pretty unique that they had a bull in there. So we don't know. This hasn't leaked out. Like this hasn't like come out in a inside message board forum kind of, you know, sneaky look inside the program
You figured there would have
posted
been someone who stepped up to the plate and said, "Yes, Matt Rhule called me, and I got a bowl for him." You know, like
I found out how it happened. Let me cut.
hasn't happened yet. I wonder if anybody was on Interstate 80 as the bull came into town on the back, and little did they know it's going directly to Nebraska's weight room to take a bunch of pictures and then go back home. So I don't know.
Yeah, what happened to it after it became the star of the recruiting weekend? I don't know. Matt Rhule's going to have to tell us about the bull, so we'll hear about that. This was probably not. You never know, but I'm thinking it's probably not the main podium, a main podium topic of discussion. Does he get asked about that in front of like 500 people with live television going, or is it more something that's on the side podium?
It's funny because the side podium, the main podium, he certainly will have, there's like 10 minutes up there, but on the side, it gets crazy because he's up there for like a half hour or 50 minutes or something like that.
It's almost an hour.
Yeah. And and people just kind of come in and out, and they're just like, let me lob you a couple of these. Obviously the local media kind of stay there the entire time because they can't miss anything. But yeah, I would bet on side podium for sure on that one.
What I love about the side podium, we'll finish this up here, is when somebody comes in from, say, like Pennsylvania or Washington, and they've missed like the first 35 minutes with any head coach, could be Matt Rhule or whatever, and they ask the exact question that he's already answered 9 times.
Yep.
Yeah. That's fun. That's fun stuff. Yeah.
Part of
the coaches like it too. The coaches love that. All right. Next time you hear from us, we'll be talking about the Live Bowl and what Matt Rhule said, and what Matt Rhule and Dylan Raiola and Henry Lutovsky and Deshaun Singleton said about everything that happened on Tuesday in Las Vegas at Big Ten Media Days. Thank you today for making Locked On Nebraska your first listen. For your second listen, check out the Portal Show. Brian Smith is there with all of the information about rapid changes to the college football landscape. Find the Portal on YouTube or wherever you listen to podcasts.